I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who'd betray her vows. But life has a way of testing you in moments you least expect. And in the middle of all the chaos, work stress, emotional distance, and a house that felt more like a hotel than a home, I made a decision that changed everything. I had an affair. One mistake. That came from a place of loneliness, not hate. I still loved my husband. I truly did. That's what made it all the more painful. When I confessed, I expected anger. I expected hurt. But what I didn't expect was nothing. No questions, no yelling, no effort, just silence. Like he had already given up on us long before I slipped. He moved to the guest room the same night, packed his work bag like he was going on a trip, and for days, maybe even weeks, it felt like I was the only one who wanted to fix what was broken. We weren't always like this. There was a time we laughed over burned toast, danced in the living room without music, and stayed up late just talking. But somewhere along the way, life got loud and we got quiet. And in that silence, I lost my way. I thought admitting the truth, being honest, might open a door to healing. But instead, it closed one. He stopped looking at me the same. He avoided eye contact, avoided the kitchen when I was in it, and left his coffee cup in the sink even though he always used to wash it right after breakfast. I tried everything. Counseling sessions, handwritten letters, even making his favorite meals. But nothing reached him. It was like he was done. Completely done. And that shattered me in ways I wasn't ready for. The guilt of what I did was heavy. But the loneliness of trying to rebuild a marriage alone was even heavier. I kept wondering, was he waiting for me to fail again? Or was he just waiting for the right moment to walk away without looking back? I stayed up nights watching him sleep from the doorway, wishing he'd turn over and just say one thing, anything. But he never did. I made a mistake. Yes, but I didn't walk away. I stayed. I fought. I believed we were worth saving. But what happens when you're the only one still fighting? And then one morning, I found something in his drawer that left me frozen, something I never saw coming. It was a folded piece of paper tucked beneath some old receipts and a few pens in the back corner of his drawer. I wasn't looking for anything, just trying to find a spare charger, but when my fingers brushed against it, something made me pause. I don't know why I opened it. Maybe part of me was hoping it was a sign, anything to help me understand what was going on inside his head. But what I saw wasn't comforting. It was a printed email from a woman I didn't know. The message wasn't romantic, not in words at least, but it was personal. Too personal. It spoke of shared moments from work, late night calls, inside jokes. It ended with a line that stuck in my chest. Thanks for listening. You're the only one who truly understands me. It was dated 3 weeks before I confessed. My hands trembled as I folded it back, trying to convince myself it didn't mean what it looked like. But something shifted in me that day. Suddenly, his coldness made sense, or at least had a shape. I started noticing things I'd overlooked before. The way he smiled at his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. The weekend he said he had to go into the office but came back wearing a different cologne. The change in his playlists. Small things. But when you're hurting, even small things scream. I wasn't sure if it was just my guilt playing tricks on me. Maybe I was looking for a reason to blame him too. Maybe I just couldn't handle being the only one who made a mistake. But my gut told me there was more to his silence than pain. I wanted to ask him, confront him right then and there, but I didn't. I couldn't. Something about the way he looked lately, like he was somewhere else even when he was home, made me feel like I'd lose him completely if I pushed too hard. So I kept pretending we were still a married couple just going through a rough patch, even though the distance between us felt like a canyon. Meanwhile, our friends had started asking questions. My sister noticed how we didn't hold hands anymore. My mom offered to pray for us without saying why. And still, he said nothing. Not to them. Not to me. We were living in the same house, eating at the same table, but everything felt fake. I didn't know what was worse, what I had done, or what I was starting to believe he had already done before me. And yet, I still wasn't ready for the truth I was about to uncover. Days turned into weeks, and I kept waking up with a knot in my stomach. The kind you can't shake even with a hot shower or a strong cup of coffee. He barely spoke to me unless it was about bills or grocery lists. I felt like a roommate, not a wife. And while I kept trying to make things feel normal, deep down I knew we were just going through the motions. What hurt the most wasn't just the silence, it was how easy it seemed for him to live without me emotionally. One night, while folding laundry, I noticed one of his shirts smelled faintly of perfume. Not mine. It was floral, soft, unfamiliar. I pressed it closer, almost trying to convince myself it was a new detergent. But it wasn't. I stood there holding that shirt, feeling like my heart had slipped right out of my chest. Still, I didn't say anything. Not yet. Meanwhile, at work, I was barely holding it together. I'd stare at my screen for hours pretending to be busy. My manager pulled me aside and asked if everything was okay. I gave her the usual just tired line, but I knew she saw right through it. Everyone did. Even my best friend, Laura, had started dropping hints. Do you think he's seeing someone? She asked softly over coffee one afternoon. I couldn't answer, because the truth was I didn't know, and that was tearing me apart. One evening, while scrolling through social media, I saw a tagged post, a group photo from some corporate dinner. There he was, sitting way too close to that same woman from the email. Her smile was wide, her hand resting lightly on his arm. He didn't look uncomfortable. If anything, he looked familiar with her, relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in months. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept playing every conversation in my head, every strange moment, every quiet dinner. I kept asking myself if this was his way of punishing me, if he wasn't going to leave, but he was never going to forgive either. Just keep me in this limbo until I broke completely. And then there was the growing part of me that wondered, had I truly been the first to betray us? Or had he already checked out, emotionally or even physically, long before I made my mistake? What I didn't realize at the time was that this wasn't just about an affair or even two people drifting apart. Something deeper was going on, something I hadn't even begun to uncover. And one night, when I finally followed a quiet hunch, I ended up in a place I never thought I'd be. Looking through a door that wasn't mine. It was a Saturday evening. When I finally decided to stop pretending, he said he had to drop by the office again. No explanation. No specific task. Just a vague excuse. I smiled and nodded like always, but the moment he pulled out of the driveway, I grabbed my keys and followed. I didn't plan to. My heart was racing, my palms sweating, but something inside me said I couldn't sit in that silence anymore. I needed answers even if they broke me. I stayed a few cars behind, far enough that he wouldn't notice. He didn't go to the office. He turned onto a quiet street on the other side of town and pulled up to a house I didn't recognize. My stomach twisted. I parked a bit further down, barely breathing, and watched him walk up the path like he'd been there 100 times. He didn't knock. He just walked in. I sat frozen. The minutes felt like hours. Cars passed. Lights flickered on in nearby windows. I kept trying to convince myself that maybe it was nothing, maybe it was just a friend, or a favor, or some innocent reason. But deep down, I already knew. I just hadn't accepted it. Eventually, I got out of the car and walked toward the house. My legs felt heavy, like they were moving through water. I told myself I wouldn't go in. I'd just get close enough to know. But as I got to the porch, the front window was slightly cracked open, and that's when I heard her laugh. Her voice, soft, familiar, and then his laughing too, not the stiff, polite laugh he gave me at home. This was real, warm, like the version of him I hadn't seen in months. I leaned in closer, just for a second, and saw them sitting close on the couch, their knees almost touching. There were 2 glasses of wine on the table and a small photo frame turned face down beside them. I couldn't breathe. I stepped back quickly, heart pounding in my ears, and nearly tripped off the steps as I hurried back to my car. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling like the world had tilted beneath me. My mistake had cost me more than I could ever measure, but now I was facing something worse than guilt. I was facing betrayal. I still didn't know the whole truth, why he chose her, how long it had been, or if he ever planned to tell me. But I knew one thing for certain: whatever I'd hoped to fix was no longer just broken. It had been replaced. And the next morning, when he walked through the door like nothing had happened, I looked at him and I didn't recognize him anymore. The next morning, he walked in with a tired smile and a coffee in his hand, as if the night before never happened. I watched him closely. The way he casually dropped his keys on the table, the way he avoided my eyes, it was all so familiar. Yet now I could see the layers behind it. Lies, distance, secrets. I had spent weeks drowning in guilt, thinking I had ruined everything. But now I realized I hadn't been alone in that. Not really. I waited until after breakfast. He was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone like always. I sat across from him and simply asked, "How long has it been going on?" His hand paused, hovering just above the screen. His face didn't flinch, but I saw the way his eyes shifted, just for a second. That tiny hesitation was all the answer I needed. He didn't deny it. He didn't say her name. He just stared at the floor and whispered. I didn't know how to tell you. That line, so quiet, so hollow, hit harder than any argument ever could. He admitted they had grown close after things between us became tense, that it started with friendship and just happened the same way I once described my own mistake. I thought I'd feel rage, or maybe relief, but instead, I felt something else: emptiness. Two people who had both broken trust, now sitting across from each other, trying to act like there was still something left to save. We talked for hours. For the first time in months, we spoke openly. No shouting, no blame, just painful, quiet honesty. We admitted everything. The affair, the silence, the loneliness, the ways we both had failed each other. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't clean, but at least it was real. Then came the twist I never saw coming. As I gathered myself to leave the room, he reached into his jacket pocket and handed me an envelope. I was waiting for the right time, he said. I opened it with trembling fingers. It was a letter, not to me but to her, a breakup letter. He had written it 2 weeks ago, dated, signed, folded neatly. He never sent it. I wanted to fix us, he said, but when I saw you stop fighting, I gave up too. I stood there, stunned. He had tried to end it, just like I had tried to save us. But we both waited too long, thinking the other one didn't care. We stood on the edge of something neither of us could name. The truth was out. The lies were over. But now the hardest question remained: could two broken people who hurt each other ever start again? Or was this the real ending disguised as a second chance? For a long moment, we both stood there in silence, holding everything we had finally said and everything we couldn't take back. It was strange how quiet the room felt after weeks of tension, like the house itself was exhaling. I looked at the letter again, rereading the words he never sent, trying to understand what they meant now. Was it too late? Or had we simply run out of reasons to keep holding on to the past? The next few days were slow and heavy. We didn't make any big declarations or promises. There were no dramatic apologies or sweeping gestures. Instead, we just existed next to each other, a little softer, a little more honest. He slept in the bedroom again, though we still didn't sleep close. But we talked more. Small things at first, about the news, the weather, the grocery list. Then deeper things, our fears, our shame, our shared regrets. We even went to counseling together, not because we knew we could fix everything, but because we finally admitted we wanted to try. Both of us had made mistakes. Both of us had hurt each other. But beneath all the damage, there was still something left, something worth exploring. Not the marriage we had before, but maybe a new version. One where we were no longer pretending. One where honesty wasn't feared, but expected. As for the woman he'd grown close to, he told her the truth. I never asked for the details, and he didn't offer them. But the message was clear. That chapter was closed, just like mine had been. Some friends drifted away when they learned the full story. Others stayed and supported us quietly, never judging. My family was shocked, of course. But over time, they saw the effort we were making, not just to stay together, but to become better people, whether we ended up together or not. In the end, we didn't pretend we were suddenly perfect. We had to rebuild everything from trust to communication to just learning how to sit across from each other without flinching. But we kept showing up, every day, even when it was hard. Looking back, I know now that marriage isn't just about love. It's about choice, choosing each other in the mess, not just the magic, choosing to face the truth, even when it hurts, and choosing to grow, even if it means starting over. We're still writing our story, and maybe it doesn't look like the fairy tale I once imagined, but it's real, and it's ours. And for the first time in a long time, that feels like enough. Done.